Amid questions of exactly where Iran's supreme leader Khamenei is, there are reports that suggest that he is being shifted from one bunker to another. Remember, yesterday you had the first official video that was released of the Supreme Commander speaking to the people of Iran, talking about how the battle has begun. But using that particular video, there have been questions about where exactly he is. It seems to indicate that he's been relocated from one location to another, from one bunker perhaps to another. An analysis of the footage suggests major changes, downgrades in production quality and setup, indicating that where the Supreme Commander of Iran currently is a makeshift arrangement, far from the usual studio quality environment. What you usually see from, in fact, Khamenei is an annual video. And that's usually done, of course, in high quality setup. In this case, you can see that there's a marked difference between what it usually looks like versus now. In the new video that was released yesterday, which we have analyzed in great detail on India Today, you can see that Khamenei is using a lapel mic instead of the high quality stand microphones. And that's evident really in the two pictures that we're showing on our screens. In one, you've got the Khamenei speaking essentially into a microphone. The other, it's lapel mics. And he doesn't usually use those. The overall video quality also appears to be lower. We are going to be analyzing those two videos for you with our OSINT. They will be joining us in just a bit to kind of decode for you what we can really wean away, the takeaways from this particular video that's emerged yesterday. Ankit Kumar is joining us live from the newsroom. Ankit, take it away. You've seen the video that was released yesterday and previous ones. What do you make of his current location?
So, Akshita, there are multiple reports indicating or speculating that the supreme leader of Iran might have been shifted to a bunker. How do we know it? So, what we have done is we have run, our India Today OSINT team has run visual forensics on these two videos. These two videos have been analyzed, their metadata has been extracted, and the results are telling. You know, we have two samples. On your left is a video, very recent, from June 10th, but that was before the war had started. On your right is a screenshot of the video. That is the most recent video that was released yesterday by the office of the Supreme Leader of Iran. Now, you can see the difference. First difference is in the file size. You know, the bit rate is something the density of data or video contains. The higher the video quality, the bit rate goes up. In the older video, you can see the bit rate is 892, roughly 900 kbps. That comes down to 256 kbps. The audio quality has been compressed very much, 95.4, it goes down to 2.4. What does it say? It says that the supreme leader of Iran is now likely have been moved from a usual production environment. Of course, you mentioned the change of mics, you know, all the speeches that you track from that comes from Khamenei's office. This standard mic is used. Yesterday, he's using a lapel mic, something like this, a deviation from his standard quality. The last video, Akshita, was roughly 9 minutes, and still the file size is just 18. The video before that was just less than 4 minutes, and the file size was almost 25 MB. So you can see the difference. Three things, Akshita. First, most likely the environment has changed. Second, the equipment quality has definitely changed, maybe a use of a mobile phone. Third, even the production quality, it has gone down. So all these telling signs are now indicating that the supreme leader of Iran perhaps might indeed have been shifted from his usual place to a makeshift underground facility, as being reported in multiple media platforms. Akshita?
Right. Thanks very much, Ankit, for getting us those details. At this point, of course, there have been multiple threats already issued by Israel, in some cases by America also, that they're going after Khamenei. And so at such a time, there are a lot of questions about exactly where the Supreme Commander of Iran is. Suggestions right now that he is hiding in a bunker, in a hideout. Thanks very much, Ankit, for joining us with all of those details. Let's get you the latest updates that have come in on the Israel-Iran conflict. Shows no signs of dying down, and clearly Iran now is also upping the ante. How? Well, there are images that have come in. What you see on your screens is the moment when Iran actually targeted a hospital in Israel. A ballistic missile fired from Iran directly struck the Soroka hospital. This is in Tel Aviv. Images emerged right after of the chaos that broke out, of patients, of doctors running out in sheer panic. Iran claims that this was actually some sort of a military setup and hence they targeted this hospital. But the reality is, looking at the footage on your screens, the price of war is always about innocent lives being disrupted, about innocent lives being lost. This attack by Iran comes a day after the nation's supreme commander, Khamenei, had warned that the battle has begun. Iran too, let's be clear, has also suffered damages. Airstrikes were reported on key nuclear and missile strikes across Tehran, including uranium enrichment and centrifuge sites, including the Arak nuclear reactor and the Natanz facility. Both sides aren't backing down. Both sides are escalating this conflict. And in such a situation, the question that looms is, how really will this end?
A full-scale war in West Asia continues to escalate. For the first time, Israeli hospitals and schools are at the receiving end. Iran fired a barrage of ballistic missiles at Israel's Beersheba area that struck the Soroka hospital, South Israel's largest medical facility. The hospital sustained considerable damage and over 25 people were injured in the attack.
This is a very big hospital in the south of Israel. I would assume that thousands of patients is easy. This is the first time, as far as I remember or know, that one of the missiles hits a medical building.
Israel condemned the attack on innocents in hospital, calling out Iranian tyrants' terror. Israeli Prime Minister vowed to avenge the attacks and make Iran pay. However, Iran claims that the hospital was not on target but was close to IDF intelligence campus and Israel's Central Command headquarters and felt the shockwaves due to its close proximity. Not only hospitals but residential buildings are now on target. A ballistic missile launched by Iran struck a school in Tel Aviv. Another such attack was carried out at the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, which showed the entire building shattered. These Iranian strikes come after IDF carried out airstrikes on key nuclear and missile sites across Tehran and Arak nuclear reactor apart from the Natanz nuclear facility. But these attacks from Iran and Israel mark a grave escalation, with civilian infrastructure now coming under direct fire. Bureau Report, India Today.
Let's bring in Pranay Upadhyay of India Today Global on this broadcast as well. Pranay, with this attack on a hospital by Iran, how has Israel reacted? Are we going to be seeing now a scale-up of the kind of attacks, the missile attacks that Israel has been carrying out on Iran?
Akshita, just after this missile attack on the Beersheba hospital, the Soroka hospital, which is in the southern part of Israel, Israel has launched another airstrike on Iran. Just now, just a while ago, Israeli Air Force has confirmed that they have carried out a new wave of airstrike on Iran, and they have engaged more than 20 targets in Iran, though they have claimed that these targets were primarily the surface-to-surface missile launching facilities, also the missile storage facilities and the military bases of Iran. We do not know for sure that whether there is a collateral damage in these strikes or not. Around 20 plus fighter jets of the Israeli Air Force flew in the Iranian airspace, and they have carried out these airstrikes on different areas and different locations. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu clearly stated that the Israel will avenge these attacks, and the Iranian missile strikes are continuously pouring in on the Israeli territories, and therefore the sirens and alerts are still being sounded in Israeli territories. So therefore we can make out that there is a clear intensification of this conflict. We are not looking at any ceasefire right now, and with US mobilizing more troops, more forces in that area, the fear of US joining or the escalation of this conflict still remains there. Let me tell you that USS Gerald R. Ford, which is the newest
aircraft carrier, the carrier battle group 12 of the US Navy has also been moved in that theater, in that conflict zone area. And this adds to the number of the US carrier battle groups to 3 in that region of Middle East as well as the Mediterranean.
Okay, interesting developments that Pranay is telling us about, including how US seems to be also stepping up right now. Remains to be seen whether they're going to then formally announce that they're also striking Iran. But also when you look at these images, thanks very much, Pranay, for joining us with those details. When you see those images of how Israel has been struck, one question that constantly comes up, and I just want to take that across to you, is about why the Iron Dome hasn't worked. Sandeep Punithan is with us in the studio, and I'll go across to him in just a bit. But let's talk about how really the Iron Dome hasn't been able to stop some of these strikes. There are a couple of possibilities and reasons for that. First is that you've got mass missiles, hypersonic missiles being used by Iran, and that's something that has overwhelmed the air defense system in Israel. Coordinated drone waves by Iran also. So you're seeing huge number of drone strikes, and so some of them are permeating right through. There's also the issue of limited reload capacity. It takes time. Each battery holds just 20 interceptors. And so in that small gap of a delay in reloading, there are temporary gaps when maybe you've got Iran successfully striking their targets. Another possibility, another reason could be high cost imbalance. Remember that each of these interceptors are hugely, it's a liability essentially, that each one of them costs about $50,000 to $100,000. So just imagine the kind of losses Israel is facing every single time they have to intercept a missile, versus Iran's rockets only cost a few $100s. It's very similar to what Pakistan perhaps attempted to do against India by putting across these cheap drones and rockets that they tried to fire into Indian airspace. Also keep in mind that this kind of an air defense system isn't built for all threats. Iran, therefore, has tried to figure out what exactly they can do to kind of reach their targets. They're using super fast missiles. They're using stealth, low-flying drones, which are also extremely difficult to detect. What we're also seeing, perhaps, is selective engagement. That essentially what Israel is doing is taking a very clear strategy where they're targeting the missiles that could cause massive damage. So rockets that are bound for open areas where there won't be casualties perhaps are being let off in a sense. You're not seeing them being intercepted. Also saving ammo, but lets some payloads get hit to ensure minimal damage. I'll take this across to Sandeep. Sandeep, what do you think of the possibilities we've put forth? There are a lot of questions right now of why we're not seeing a 100% strike rate by the Iron Dome. What do you think, Sandeep?
Well, Akshita, missile defense is an incredibly difficult science. It's like, using a bullet to shoot another bullet down. These missiles are coming in at incredibly fast speeds. The IRBMs that Iran is believed to have fired today, which is either the Khorramshahr 3 or the Sejil, which are intermediate range ballistic missiles, have a terminal velocity of something like Mach 10 to Mach 15, which means they're coming in at this 15 times the speed of sound. And if you can imagine a missile dropping down at that velocity, it becomes very difficult for missile interceptors to stop them. And something else that we've picked up is that this is possibly the use of a MIRV, that is a multiple re-entry vehicle that the Iranians are believed to have used here, which is that one missile splits into several smaller missiles with independent re-entry vehicles, which complicates missile defense. So Iran is using clearly some of its top-line IRBMs to target Israel. This is what they literally warned of yesterday, that we're going to start hitting you in ways that you can't imagine. That was the message, and it clearly points to a very advanced level of IRBMs that are being used, which are basically meant to overwhelm Israel's missile interceptors. And the primary interceptor that the Israelis have for this is the Arrow 3. Now, the Arrow 3 is part of that huge missile defense shield that Israel has created around itself. The Arrow 3 can intercept missiles out to about 3,000 kilometers almost at the very edges of space. But even that is not a foolproof system. As we've just seen, there are invariably some missiles that will break through that shield and will get there and that is the Iranian strategy as well, to overwhelm the system with a maximum number of ballistic missiles, of that velocity and speed, which you can't protect everything at the same time.
So Israel is unable essentially to combat this. The sense we got, Sandeep, and I remember last year when there were attempts by Hamas to target Israel as well, all of those were immediately wiped out. None of them was successful. And essentially the idea that was given was that the Iron Dome is something that you just can't penetrate. That's not true. It's not 100% foolproof,
You know, Hamas rockets, Akshita, I've seen both Hamas rockets, I've seen Hezbollah rockets have been under a missile attack in Tel Aviv last year. I know the feeling. The Hamas rockets are completely rudimentary, they're crude. They can be easily intercepted by the Iron Dome and the David Sling, the two very competent Israeli missile interceptors. But when you're looking at Iran, you're looking at a country, a nation that's got all of its scientific capabilities. The Iranians are very good at building ballistic missiles. You can, of course, question the fact about the ethics of targeting civilian areas and hospitals. Yeah. But the fact is that the Iranians have a very formidable ballistic missile capability that they've built over the years. They've got something like 13 different types of ballistic missiles, ranging from short-range ballistic missiles all the way up to intermediate range and possibly even intercontinental ballistic missiles. They are liquid fueled, they're solid fueled. They have, MIRVs of the kind that I just described. They have all manners of, deception to fool missile interceptors like this. So Iran is really the major game that Israel has actually planned to take on for so long. But, this is, a whole different level of threat that Israel's missile interceptors are having to cope up with.
Essentially, Iran is a threat that can't be taken lightly by Israel, looking at their details and the kind of missiles that they have with them. Let's just run our viewers through also the missiles that Iran has used so far. Everyone's, of course, been talking about the hypersonic missile Fatah 1, which has been used. Iran has confirmed that. Highly maneuverable. It's designed essentially to change trajectory during re-entry and so evade interceptors. It has a range of about 1,400 kilometers, reported speeds of Mach 13 to 15. That's been used against Israel. Then you have the Sejil missile. It's a solid fuel, medium range ballistic missile intercepted. It was intercepted actually over central Israel. But this is something that was also deployed by Iran. The Ahmad missile, a liquid fuel, medium range ballistic missile, fragments of which were recovered from the Dead Sea. So that gave us a confirmation that this was used. This missile has a travel time of just 12 minutes. 12 minutes sent off from Iran, touches down its target in Israel. And so that's why you've got essentially that message that Sandeep also told us about how Iran has game-changer missiles. And so a threat that can't be taken lightly. Let's cut across to breaking news coming in. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hasn't ruled out the elimination, assassination of Khamenei. Now, Netanyahu in his latest message has said, all options are open. You will see action. So essentially, the Israeli Prime Minister sending out a message that no, as far as the assassination of Khamenei is concerned, it's not something that's off the table. Netanyahu doesn't rule it out and says in his latest statement that all options are open. It's better not to talk about it with the press in the media. On the possibility particularly of eliminating Khamenei, you've got a statement from Netanyahu saying, I've instructed the IDF, which is the Israeli Defense Force, that no one in that regime will have immunity. I don't like to talk, I like to act. A clear message that's coming from Netanyahu saying no one is immune. And that was to a question that was asked about whether there's a possibility of Israel going after Khamenei. And as we get to all of those latest reactions, updates coming in, I did break down for you the kind of missiles used by Iran. What does that look like? A comparison of Iran's arsenal versus Israel's arsenal. We've seen a deadly exchange of missile strikes. Here's a very interesting explainer by Sandeep.
It's one of the world's most bizarre conflicts, the Israel-Iran war, where both adversaries are over 1,000 kilometers apart. They don't share a common boundary. And that's the distance between them, over 2,000 kilometers, two countries between them. There's Syria, Iraq, and then, of course, Iran. And that's Israel here.
Now, Israel has been attacking Iran with its fighter jets. Since the 13th of June, Israel has mounted waves of fighter aircraft attacks. In fact, in one attack on the first day of the war, they launched something like 300 fighter jets, which struck at 200 targets. That's almost the size of the entire Iranian Air Force. Now, Iran has been striking back with ballistic missiles and drones. They're supposed to have launched something like 100 ballistic missiles and over 1,000 drones. So where is Iran's Air Force? Now, Iran has an Air Force of about 300 fighter aircraft, but it's mostly obsolete. It has aircraft like the F-14, the F-4, and the F-5 that were acquired in the 1970s. It's a pretty useless and obsolete Air Force that they have. But what Iran does to make up for its lack of an Air Force is its missile force. It's believed to have something like 3,000 ballistic missiles. That's right, 3,000 ballistic missiles. And there are 13 types of these missiles. They're both short range and intermediate range missiles. Now, the missiles that they struck at with Israel today were intermediate range ballistic missiles. Some of them were hypersonic. And this suggests that missiles like the Fatah were used, which have a range of something like over 3,000 kilometers, which means they could hit Israel with relative ease. And the fact that they are hypersonic means that they could also evade Israel's missile defenses. So that's where Iran has invested all of its resources in the last couple of decades to build up this drone and missile force. Primarily these missiles, ballistic missiles like the Fatah and the Sejil, which are hypersonic. They have, as I mentioned, a range of over 3,000 kilometers. They're both solid and liquid fueled, so very capable ballistic missile force. Where is Israel's missile force? Now, Israel is also a it has a potent arsenal. It has an air force, a navy, and an army, quite unlike Iran. Now, Israel also has missiles of its own. It has the Jericho missiles, the Jericho 2 and the Jericho 3. Now, these are a series of missiles that began to be introduced in the 1960s onwards. That they started with the Jericho 1, and then they went on to the Jericho 2 and the Jericho 3. Now, these missiles actually have a range of 3,000 kilometers, more than 3,000 kilometers. They are also intermediate range ballistic missiles like Iran's Fatah series and the Sejil series. They are also IRBMs. But why are Israeli ballistic missiles not used? Well, Israel's ballistic missiles are actually nuclear weapons carriers. They are a weapon of last resort. They are tipped with nuclear weapons. Israel is a nuclear weapon state, though it never acknowledges that fact. And all its missiles are nuclear weapons carriers, which means that they will not be used in a conventional conflict of the kind that we are seeing today. They would be only used if the conflict were to escalate to a nuclear dimension. Now, Israel has another set of very capable missiles called the Popeye Turbo. As funny as this sounds, this is a very, very lethal cruise missile, which is believed to have a range of over 1,000 kilometers. Now, these Popeye Turbo missiles are carried on Israel's fleet of Dolphin 1 and 2 class submarines. Now, Israel has about 5 of these submarines built in Germany. But the interesting thing is that these submarines, again, are nuclear weapons carriers. They carry the Popeye Turbo, which have a range of 1,000 kilometers. They operate here in the Red Sea, in the Arabian Sea, and of course the Mediterranean Sea. But these are nuclear weapon carriers as well. So Israel has a very unique submarine arm that it uses conventional submarines and not nuclear submarines like India operates. It has conventional submarines carrying cruise missiles that are tipped with nuclear weapons. So here you have two countries, Iran, which is supposed to have a recessed nuclear capability, which Israel is striking at to prevent it from acquiring nuclear weapons. Israel is fully armed with nuclear weapons. It is, of course, not using them as of now, but it is striking very hard at Iranian nuclear enrichment facilities because it wants to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, from getting the kind of weapons that Israel has, and also potentially threatening Israel's survival as a nation.
Okay, let's also tell you about what's happening in Iran. We told you about how Israel, a hospital, has been hit. Well, Iran too, you're seeing the situation spiraling. Israel has claimed that it struck nuclear bases in Bushehr, in Isfahan and Natanz and continues to target additional facilities. Israel also says it's targeted Iran's police headquarters. Iran, of course, has fired more than 400 ballistic missiles at Israel in retaliation in the last 1 week. Increasingly, Iranians have been leaving Tehran. They've been arriving at borders with Turkey and Armenia, seeking shelter from the intensifying Israeli strikes. Iran's supreme leader Khamenei has said that the nation is against any form of imposed peace and that the US involvement in the conflict clearly shows Israel's weakness and inability. And amid all of this, Iran vowing that they will continue to punish Israel. It's been a week since the tragic crash of AI-171 in Ahmedabad that claimed 270 lives. Investigators now face a major hurdle. The black box, key to understanding what went wrong, was severely damaged in the blaze. And so it will now be flown to America for advanced data recovery. Experts here in India have been unable to get to the data in the black box. As grieving families, as a grieving nation seeks answers, India is also taking steps to tighten airport safety rules. Steps perhaps that should have been taken long, long back.
It has been a week since the ill-fated flight AI-171 crashed in Ahmedabad, leaving at least 270 people dead. The answer to 1,000 questions about what went wrong all rest in this brightly colored box, ironically named a black box. But the process has hit a snag, as the black box of flight AI-171 has been severely damaged in the blaze following the crash. It will now be taken to US so that its data can be extracted. Authorities have confirmed that the device sustained extreme heat damage in the post-crash blaze, making data extraction impossible with domestic technology. The black box will be now taken to the US, where the data will be recovered through the chip extraction, which will be done by removing the memory board. The electronic circuit will also be assessed for damage. The black box will be escorted by Indian officials to the US National Transport Safety Board lab in Washington, D.C., with strict chain of custody protocols in place, and the data extracted will be handed over to the Indian investigation authorities. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Civil Aviation has unveiled stringent draft regulations pertaining to hazardous structures near airport, which include demolishing or forcing a height reduction of buildings, taking immediate action against non-compliant structures, height restrictions on buildings and trees, enforcing a 60-day deadline for violators to submit structural details. But is this too little too late? As the grieving families await answers, all eyes are on the data of the black box and what it reveals. Bureau Report, India Today.
Let's get you details of a statement put out by Air India CEO Campbell Wilson, who's essentially confirmed what we told you here on India Today a couple of days ago, that the ill-fated plane actually went through regular checks. The last major check was done in June 2023. The next was scheduled for December 2025. So as and when the checks were supposed to happen, they were conducted. The Air India CEO has confirmed that. He's also said that as a confidence-building measure, because you're seeing all of this fear of flying Air India right now, he has said that they are currently undertaking enhanced pre-flight safety checks on particularly the Boeing 787 fleet. Steps being taken right now by Air India a week after that crash to ensure that all other aircraft also are completely technically sound. But amid questions about whether there was a problem with regards to maintenance, whether there was any schedule that wasn't followed, the Air India CEO putting all of that to rest, saying very clearly, as scheduled, maintenance took place. The next one was scheduled for December 2025. The last maintenance that had happened was in June 2023, as per protocol. Now, the reason the Air India CEO has also spoken about the kind of safety checks put in place is because Air India is struggling from plummeting passenger confidence post the tragic Ahmedabad crash. The airline is also grappling with a spate of ticket cancellations and low demands, forcing it to offer sharp fare cuts. Details in our next report on the Air India financial turmoil.
The ripple effects of the Air India crash in Ahmedabad are likely to haunt the national carrier for a long time. The airline is grappling with significant loss of life and damage to equipment, a financial blow that could derail its target of breaking even by the end of this financial year. Adding to its woes is a growing crisis of confidence among flyers. Reports suggest a surge in ticket cancellations, and now, as Business Today TV has found, Air India is offering tickets at steep discounts. The markdowns are particularly stark on Boeing 787 routes, the same aircraft type involved in the Ahmedabad crash. Business Today TV reviewed fares for flights a week from now on June 26. For instance, a seat on Air India 143 from Delhi to Paris on a Boeing 787 is priced at under 31,000 rupees. In contrast, the same route on Air France costs nearly 64,000 rupees. A westbound flight from Delhi to Amsterdam on Air India 155 is available for 26,200 rupees, while KLM 872 is priced at rupees 66,871 for the same journey. On the eastbound front, an Air India ticket from Delhi to Hong Kong is available for under 13,000 rupees, whereas a Cathay Pacific flight on the same route costs nearly 3 times more. A Delhi-Tokyo flight on Air India Boeing 787 is priced at around 37,500 rupees. A ticket on Japan Airlines for the same route and date costs close to 52,000 rupees. The difference in fares on other Air India aircraft is not as dramatic. For example, Delhi to London on Air India 111, an Airbus aircraft, is slightly more expensive than a British Airways ticket. However, the Delhi-New York JFK route on Air India is roughly 25% cheaper than American Airlines. A Delhi-Chicago flight on Air India Boeing 777 is priced around 30% lower than the corresponding American Airlines fare. These sharp fare cuts come even as Air India has announced a reduction in international services operated by its wide-body fleet, Boeing 787s, Boeing 777s and Airbus A350s by 15% effective immediately and lasting until at least mid-July. Air India currently operates around 70 international flights daily using its wide-body aircraft. Bureau Report, Business Today TV.
And as I wrap up this edition of Super 6, I'm leaving you with dramatic footage of a SpaceX test rocket exploding. Now, even as the footage went viral, this is the moment there of the test that took place at the SpaceX base in Las Vegas. You had Elon Musk brushing it aside, saying it was just a scratch. Look at those images, decide for yourself. It was just a scratch. Thanks very much for tuning in.
Oh.
Yeah, probably. I mean, even the other day when they... Whoa! Whoa!
What? That's not good.
No!
Oh my God.